Interesting points there on the race to the White House. Well, I have joining me a global affairs analyst, Calvin Dark. He joins me here on the news to speak more about the Nevada caucuses and all the issues that has to do with the elections and appointing or nominating a presidential candidate for the Democrats. Now, going from what Bernie Sanders said, saying that I do not believe in oligarchs who are buying elections. First of all, why are they all taking a jibe at Mark Bloomberg?
Well, because I think they realize that, unfortunately, if you have enough money, you can make a real impact in this election. And just to let you know kind of what the scale of it is during the debate that happened this past week, even Mike Bloomberg's campaign said that he didn't do well, and a lot of people saw him falter on stage. But more people saw him in a positive light in the over $400 million worth of ads that he was able to buy. So one of the reasons that they're coming so hard for him is they realize that with money, he can buy a lot of influence and support.
So you think Mike Bloomberg is actually the problem now when it comes to the Democratic Party? On their race to the White House, why the unanimous, animosity against him? Is he actually the problem?
Well, I think what they're frustrated against is after every state where we have a primary, each of these candidates, except for Mike Bloomberg, has to raise money. And obviously, if you don't do well in a primary or caucus, then you're not going to have those donors. And so that's why each of these candidates has to be out there every day mixing with the people to try to get as many votes as they can. The thing with Mike Bloomberg is if he doesn't do well, he just continues to pay. So he doesn't have that pressure and he doesn't have to put himself in difficult media interviews or like town halls. So that's why they're frustrated, because he can do things with his money that they can't do.
Not necessarily the fact that it could be someone like Donald Trump. Is that a reason? Because if you look at the arguments, at the debate, they mentioned him being a capitalist, just like Donald Trump,
Well, I do think one positive thing that Mike Bloomberg has going for him, as far as that's concerned, is there's nobody else that knows Donald Trump as well as he does in the Democratic field. They're both from New York, very wealthy individuals who've had to deal with each other through getting along and not getting along for, I'd say, 20 years. So that's one thing that Mike Bloomberg does have as an advantage outside of his money, because people know he's not intimidated by Donald Trump because he's had to face him for the last 2 decades.
But let's look at what the Democrat front is. They seem to be appealing more to the Latinos, the African Americans. Do you think that population can actually boost the eventual Democratic presidential candidate to defeat the Republican nominee?
Yes, now particularly for African Americans, and we'll see this, as you know, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina now. The South Carolina primary is coming up next week. Of the Democrats in the state, 60% are African American. So African American votes for the nominee will be very critical, because 90+% are going to go for the Democratic nominee if everything stays the way that it is. With the Latino community, it's a little bit different, particularly if you look at Nevada, because I believe during the general election in 2016, 28% of Latinos voted for Donald Trump, even as he's saying he wanted to throw the Dreamers out and build the wall. So I think both of those communities are important, but I think the African Americans are less flexible as leaving the Democratic Party. We'll find out today in the Nevada caucus just how divided or unified the Latino vote is.
So you're in South Carolina, where a shooting happened in 2015.
Yes.
You just told us about some of the vibe you're getting from the voters, who they would eventually vote for. But looking at the shootings that we've had for quite some time now in America, do you think the campaign of the far right, how will this affect the elections, the polls later this year?
Well, I do think, and it's interesting how Mike Bloomberg factors into this. I'm here this morning at Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina, where 9 parishioners during a Bible study were murdered. And it's, of course, incredibly emotional for me, and just reminds me of the things that we need to fix in this country. And it also reminds me that we have a lot of political opposition, particularly from the right, on these issues. Now, when I mentioned that this ties in Mike Bloomberg, one of the things that's very positive for him that I do think might mitigate some of his other racial issues is he genuinely is for gun control and has put his money where his mouth is. So I think that that will be one of the things that propels him if he does make it to the convention and possibly being a nominee.
Calvin Dark, Global Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for joining us on the news at this time. We hope to get you back to see and discuss the outcome at the Nevada caucuses. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'll be here till Tuesday. Call me anytime.
All right, thank you so much.